Good morning and welcome to Daylight Church Online. We're just so thankful that you're joining us this morning and hope that you have a great experience. We want to let you know that if you'll go to mydaylightchurch.com, there's a card there that says Online Church. And on the Online Church card, it'll tell you everything you need to know about being a part of our online church community, how you can get involved in small groups, how you can give financially, how you can be involved in the service projects that we do. So even if you're in Kansas or Cambodia, you can sure join us and be a part of our church. We'd like you to check it out there and introduce yourself. So go to mydaylightchurch.com and check out the online church card. Thanks.
When I was a freshman in high school, I was on the high school softball team. We had a great team. It was the best my high school had ever had. Our pitcher was an incredible athlete, and it was her senior year. Our hometown of 1,300 people were rooting for us to make it to the state tournament, and we made it. I was an okay softball player, but just okay. I wasn't good enough to play. I was, however, a decent runner, so I became the catcher's courtesy runner. So the catcher would bat whatever base she would make it to, then I would sub in and run the bases for her. So I learned a lot about running bases that year. So the first game of the state tournament, and the catcher is up to bat. She hits a single, and I trot my nervous 14-year-old self out to first base. About half the town was there to watch us. We had never had a softball team make it to the state tournament before. So standing on first base, trembling a little, the next batter hits the ball, and I honestly don't remember exactly what happened next. It's all kind of a traumatic blur. But there was a pop fly, some really poor decisions on my part, some sprinting, and I managed to get a double out for my team, which made 3 outs and ended the game. My life at 14 was over. At that point in my life, it was the worst moment I had ever experienced. In a kind of traumatized daze, I sauntered out of the dugout, and a senior boy named Marcus Lamp, he was there to watch his girlfriend, a starter, play, and he approached me. I don't remember if he said anything or not, but he wrapped both of his arms around me, and he kissed me on the forehead. I'm now 34, that was 20 years ago, and I have thought about that moment a lot. And I have learned in the past 20 years that in that moment, Marcus Lamp was behaving a lot like God. I'm discovering God to be very different than Mr. Wilson at the end of Dennis the Menace. And even though I sometimes deserve a mean, I don't want to see you or know you speech, that's not at all the way God is like. That in the midst of our mistakes and pain and stuff, the ugh of life, I believe God finds us and he gives us hugs and he gives us kisses. H has been talking about hard stuff in the past few services. Last week he talked about lamenting, and unfortunately all of us are going to need to do quite a bit of lamenting the rest of our lives. Life is just hard and it's unavoidable. In Acts chapter 9, Jesus is asked, "Who are you, Lord?" And Diana Butler Bass writes, "It's the question of a lifetime to be asked and experienced over and over again. That query frees Jesus to show up in our lives over and over again and entails remembering where we first met, how we struggled with each other along the road, and what we learned in the process." I believe there are views of God we're able to see when we're experiencing pain that we can't see when life is fine and dandy. Like most, or probably all of you, my past couple of years have been strange and difficult. We've had a global pandemic, and there's just been a lot of hard stuff, I know, in most people's lives. And so I have two points. They're kind of big, huge umbrellas that I'm going to shove quite a bit of stuff underneath. And so the first really big umbrella point is that God is with us in our pain. On April 10th, just several weeks ago, HL preached a message called Naked Dancing. And in it, he told the story of getting his heart broken by the woman he thought he was going to marry. He'd been with her for a year and a half, and he found out that she had been cheating on him, and his world collapsed. So he drove to this spot. I also Google mapped it. Near his hometown, it was a Corey League baseball team, a Corey League baseball field. And he drove his S10 pickup truck to the field. He got his nunchucks, true story, his nunchucks out of the truck, and he attacked the baseball backdrop. And he said that he nunchucked it, he kicked it, he punched it, he cussed, he screamed. By the end of it, his knuckles were bleeding. The fence was still standing, but I'm sure barely. He shook his fists at God. He was angry at God. He was blaming God. And in the midst of that, he said, he had immaturity, he had codependence. He was kind of in a place in life. He said this, in the entirety of my life, as I look back, there's probably not a single moment where I felt God's presence more. I was listening to this service at my home in Illinois, and whenever HL said that, I said out loud, "Oh, so sweet," referring to God, that's just exactly how I'm also finding God to be, that in these moments of our immaturity and our misplaced anger at God and our raging and our, my life, I don't know if my life can go on from this point. In those moments, God is near, and he shows up and just lets us know that he loves us. H said this about that experience: this girl crushed my soul. And I don't know what it is for you. You can fill in the blank. This heartache, this cancer, this ball game loss, this grief, this whatever it is. We all have these times of soul-crushing moments in our lives, or maybe even seasons that last a long time. And these are the places, I believe, where God makes his home. I wrecked a motorbike in 2012. I'm coming up on 10 years. I was in Thailand. I have a scar on my eyebrow and a scar on my lip, and my lips are kind of different shapes than they used to be because a Thai plastic surgeon sewed me up when I was still sleeping. And this picture is from before I was sewn up. So I just learned how to drive a motorbike in northern Thailand and didn't do a great job taking it down the road for the first time. I failed a left-hand turn. Rammed the curb really hard with my bike. My body flew off. My head slammed face first into a nearby metal lamppost, and I was just in a bloody, not good condition. I was taken to the nearby hospital that was really small and not equipped to handle a head injury, and I don't remember any of this. There's actually probably about 2 months of my life that are kind of just blurred out. But there are some missionaries that came to the hospital with me in Thailand, and they tell me what was happening during that time. And they said that I was awake for a few hours. I was crying, and I just kept saying Jesus. I said, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I eventually closed my eyes, went to sleep, and didn't wake up for 5 days. It's also worth mentioning that I had a head full of lice also. So I had a swollen, bleeding brain, a skull that was fractured in multiple places. I was on life support, a feeding tube, catheter, and lots of lice. So I had just flown from India, where some of my friends there had shared their lice with me. So I wasn't in a good place. After sleeping in the hospital for 5 days, I woke up. It appeared that my brain was okay, mostly. And after 3 weeks of recovery in Bangkok, I left the small hospital and I was taken to Bangkok, where they took care of me. I was recovered enough that I was able to fly back to America. My parents came to Thailand just to sit with me in the hospital, because that's what love looks like. And so they flew with me back to the States. And the first couple months of getting back to the States, they were just kind of hard. I was still really confused, really skinny, and kind of mean and aggressive, which is a sign of a head injury. And at some point, this little whisper enters my head that it would have just been better if I hadn't survived the wreck. I just had a lot of guilt. Like, I was the idiot that hopped on the motorbike. I was the idiot that cost my parents thousands of dollars and worry. And it would have been better if I hadn't survived. So I went to a local church service, and I was standing during praise and worship with this guilt heavy on me and trying to direct my attention, my thoughts to God. And I feel like God interrupted and directed his thoughts to me. And I felt like he was asking me to think about what it was I was saying when I was at the first podunk hospital. And I said to him, well, I don't remember it, but they tell me that I was saying Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And I felt just clearly that God spoke to me and said, Abbie, when you were calling my name, I was calling yours. In the moments where we don't want to live anymore, in our days that are filled with grief or confusion or insecurity or doubts, in these moments, I believe that the maker of the universe, the God who is love, is seeing us and saying our names. I journal just about every morning as I just talk to God. I listen for him. Kind of helps me be centered and remember that I'm alive to be loved and to love people. And in the inside front cover of my journal, I usually write down verses that are meaning a lot to me at that time. And my current journal has these verses written in it. Psalm 69:33, the Lord hears the needy and does not despise his captive people. Psalm 10:14, but you, O God, do see trouble and grief. The victim commits himself to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. Song of Solomon 8:3, he cradles my head while his right hand holds me close. In John 11:35, Jesus wept. And I just want to pause on that one for a moment. In John 11, Jesus is summoned to his friend Lazarus' house so he can heal him. Lazarus is really sick. Jesus is a close friend of the family. And so they say, Jesus, his family believed that he could work a miracle. So they said, Jesus, we need you to come here and help Lazarus so he can live. And Jesus stalls. He doesn't show up for 2 more days. And in the meantime, Lazarus dies. So when Jesus finally gets to the house, so it's Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, they're siblings. And Mary and Martha, I'm guessing, are sobbing, my brother just died, hysterical sobs. And Jesus knows that he's about to work a miracle. He knows that he's about to raise Lazarus from the dead, wipe away all the tears, and make the wrong things right. But before he does all that, he stops and he allows himself to feel their grief. The sorrow that Mary and Martha are feeling, the Son of God says, I want to receive that. I want to feel that in my own heart, and he does. And so this verse says that Jesus wept with the family who were mourning. And I think it's kind of life's story, that God knows he's going to make things right in the end. I believe at the end of all this, that the tears are going to be wiped away, the death is going to be swallowed up in victory, and that life and love is going to win. But in the meantime, here we are in the meantime, Jesus feels what we're feeling. He allows himself to experience the grief that we're feeling. Richard Rohr writes this, a crucified God is the dramatic symbol of the one suffering that God fully enters into with us, much more than just for us. In Matthew 23, we read, Jesus is talking about Jerusalem, and he says, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. I was making this slide at my mom's house, and I thought it'd be great to just show a picture of a chicken. And so I walked out to my mom's front yard. I snapped a photo of one of my mom's chickens, made it to the screen. My mom is really interesting and really cool and has a lot of chickens. Anyway, in this lament, well, first it's just worth noting that God laments. That, again, he knows suffering, he knows pain. So this is a lament. And I think that we can paraphrase it, and say this, that God is saying these things. I long to take care of you. I long to mother you. I long to meet your needs. I long to hold you. My son is 7 months old, Boone Tobias Martin, and wow, I'm really, on a couple social medias, and I post things pretty often, and I used to have something new to say once in a while. I don't have anything new to say. All I ever say is, wow, I get to be Boone's mom. Because it's about, I think all day long, I'm I get to be this kid's mother. It really is amazing. So he is always either right beside me or on top of me, pretty much all day, every day. And so he was with me all week when I was working on this message, and I just snapped this one as he slept next to me because I thought you guys should see him. And then I was on the porch a day this week, and I thought you should also watch him. So I snapped this.
Hi, Abbie. Hey, I like your hands. Yeah, I do. And I like your belly. And I like your cheeks. Okay. You need to get out of there? Okay. All right, let's do it.
He really is amazing. So when Boone cries, actually before he cries, when he just starts to fuss a little, it's literally the only thing I can think about is picking him up and holding him and taking care of whatever it is that he's starting to fuss about. And I believe that's because I'm made in God's image, and that the instincts that I feel that want to just pick Boone up and scoop him up when he's upset is because God has put those instincts in me, in his image. God is a way better mom than I am. And I believe that whenever you're crying, even before you start crying, even when you're just fussy, that this is what Father God wants to do with you. There is a Greek word that I discovered this week, because I'm trying to make HL proud. Theomai. And it means a long, searching gaze, the calm, intentional, continuous contemplation of an object. It shows up 22 times in the New Testament, and in English, it's translated as different words such as see, seen, watch, notice, but it means more than those words. It means to really look, to behold something and to really see it for what it is. So when I look at Boone, I'm theomaiing Boone. I don't just glance at him a few times a day. I study him. I look at study the shape of his lips and the way his little toes curl and, the way his cheeks move whenever he smiles. I love looking at him, and I believe that is because God loves looking at us. And if that seems like, whatever to you, my prayer is that God would make it true to you, that you would believe that it's true, that right now where you're sitting, God really is looking into every part of your life because he wants to. We read in Luke chapter 5, after that, Jesus went out and noticed a tax collector named Levi sitting in the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." But the word in English, noticed, is actually the Greek word theomai. So Jesus doesn't just glance at Matthew and, see a dude collecting taxes with a beard and robe, but he looks at Matthew. I believe that he sees Matthew's disappointments, his hurting relationships in his life, his deception, his hopes. And then he says, "Hey, come, be with me, follow me." He theomaied him, and that's how he looks at us. So, we need someone. We need this. We need a God who comes into our lives and says, "I see all of this, and I love you." And I believe that that's who God is. That's who I'm discovering God to be. Giant umbrella point number 2 is we choose to be with others in their pain. Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10. And it's a really important story because this is the one story Jesus is telling us of what it means to love our neighbor. And loving our neighbor, Jesus says, is the second most important command behind loving God. So in this story, I'm sure we're all familiar with it. A guy gets beat up and left on the side of the road. I probably, like you, I prefer feeling good in life. I would rather be comfortable, happy, good, not all the other stuff. Sometimes when someone starts to tell me a story and I think it's going to end sad, I'll say, I don't want to hear it. I'm in a happy place right now, and I don't want to go there. Or there's certain movies I don't want to watch because I just don't want to feel. And so I don't know if you've ever seen a person who has been beat up by several men, but it's not a pretty sight. I'm guessing that this guy was bleeding quite a bit and bruised. He might not have even been conscious. And so this Samaritan that Jesus is telling us this is what love should look like, he crosses the road to where this man is and looks at his bloody, nasty, hurting body, and then chooses to give him his time, his money. He chooses to make this man's pain his problem. And Jesus says this is what love looks like. There are, different cultures, I think, that are a lot better at just sitting and being with people in their pain than other cultures. I spent a summer in Mozambique a few years ago, and it was a mission training school ran by Iris, which is a ministry that is mostly known for Heidi Baker. And the school, we pretty much did two things. We spent time with God. It was really vertical. We just spent a lot of time worshiping, talking to God in his presence. And then we also spent a lot of time walking through the villages and just sitting with people. The villages where the school is located, it's surrounded by villages that what we would call extreme poverty, like houses that are just huts that don't have outside walls, and the roofs are made out of some kind of leaf patched together. And so we would, it was part of our schooling that we had to, we would walk through these villages and then just sit with these village people. And, a woman would be making a huge pot of rice over a little bitty tiny fire, and we would just sit and sit and sit. I'm not that good at just sitting and visiting. We go visit a family member, and I'm like, 20 minutes max. Not that I don't care about the family member, I just get bored and antsy. And so this school, just sitting with, the villagers in their poverty, it was hard. It was sad, but it was a really good lesson in love and what God says love looks like. And Heidi Baker would tell us the story of whenever her mom died. Her mom was in the States, and for whatever reason, she was delayed. She was going to be able to fly back to the States for a few days, so she was in Mozambique mourning. And when the village women heard about that, they came to Heidi wailing, and they stayed with her for hours and hours and hours, just sobbing with her. They allowed her grief to become their own. And this is what God says love looks like. So who can we encourage? Who can we hand hope to? Who can we say, hey, I see that you're having a hard time. Let me just be with you. Let me just sit with you. In 1 John 4:12, the Bible says, no one's ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. Our view of what God is like is largely shaped by one another. The way I see God, the way I believe him to be, has largely been impacted by the people in my life who've been loving me. A few months ago, my sister Kara, her youngest son Riggs, smashed his toe, pretty bad, smashed his toe. And we had been planning, my siblings and I, to go out that night. We were going to go to the movies, we were going to go out to eat. We don't get to do that very often together. And Kara, without thought, canceled her plans just so she could be with her wounded toe son. And I believe that it was because of God's nature in Kara, that God says, when one of my kids is hurt, I want to be with them. So many people have helped shape my view of God. Marcus Lamp, for example. We need to share this. I don't really know where Marcus Lamp is at in life right now, but there's the people who love us in our hurting. HL does an excellent job, I believe, of showing people the nature of Jesus. My dad, last time I was here, I was big pregnant, and I shared a message of how much my dad has taught me from his life about what God's like, and I continue to learn from my dad about God. Just this week, I had a friend in China who messaged me, and she said, your dad is the best daddy I have ever seen. All my dad wanted was to be with his family and love us. And I believe God, all he wants is to be with his family and love us. Bob Goff writes, the best parts about us are reflections of the people who have loved us selflessly. The Greek writer Lucian, who lived just shortly after Jesus, said of the early church, it is incredible to see the fervor with which the people of that religion help each other in their wants. They spare nothing. Their first legislator, Jesus, has put it into their heads that they are all brethren. What would Lucian write about us? I have been reading research on tears, and all vertebrates shed tears, even birds and reptiles, but humans are the only species that shed tears because of pain. All the others have tears only to lubricate their eyes. So scientists, researchers have been researching why are humans the only species that shed tears from pain. And they're coming to a probable reason is this because our tears need to be seen. This researcher in Florida says that crying signals to yourself and other people that there's some important problem that is at least temporarily beyond your ability to cope. We need someone to see our hurt and to care. Scientists have also discovered that the tears we shed from pain, either physical or emotional pain, they are made of different ingredients than the tears we shed when we're chopping onions. The tears we shed from pain have more protein in them. They're thicker. And again, the reason is because it takes them longer to move down our cheek. They have a better chance of being seen. Our tears need to be seen. I have a good friend who works with very troubled youth, and she just told me recently that one of the teenage girls has a baby, and she says that the baby doesn't cry anymore. She said that because the mom never responded to her cries, the baby's just given up, and it never cries. Our tears need to be seen. Every person, I'll say this first, that Donald Miller, I think, summed it up nicely, and he says, the answer to most of our troubles is rarely a right idea, and it's often just a person who will sit with us. Every person faces tragedy. Again, it's unavoidable, and we need unconditional love pouring into us. We need love that says, I don't care where you've been, I don't care what you've seen, I don't care what cuss words you've screamed, I don't care who you've hurt, I love you, I love you, I love you. And we need it not just sprinkling on top of our heads from heaven once in a while, but we need it here with us, surrounding us in the midst of our cancer and bills and politics and addictions. We need unconditional love with us, surrounding us. And God knew that. So he became one of us with feeble knees and calloused hands and friends who die and friends who turn their backs on him. And he said, I'm making this and your tragedy my home. And he's not going anywhere with the unconditional love. He's here. What has become one of my favorite verses in the Bible is in Matthew 11:28-30. And Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened. Isn't that everybody? Aren't we all kind of weary and burdened? And couldn't we all use some rest for our souls? So Jesus doesn't send us off somewhere else to get fixed. He says, come straight to me. He doesn't tell us to, fix our attitudes or to change our line of thinking first. And he doesn't say, come to me and I'll give you some assignments, do this or do that. He says, come to me and I'm going to give you rest. The song that Andrew led first today, he wrote, and in the bridge, he wrote these words, come, all you weary, lay your burdens down. Your sins are forgiven and they can't be found. This is the gospel and its goodness all around. So won't you come, come, come. When we lose the softball game, when we lose a family member that we don't know how to live without, when we get a terminal diagnosis, when maybe we're just confused or just having a hard time and we don't really know why, what God says to us is, come. His invitation stands. I wrote a few questions. If you would, I think it would be good. You can talk to your spouse or your sibling or somebody after church about it. Just one or all of these questions if you feel like it. Number one, do you believe that God is with you in your pain? Why or why not? Number two, are you good at sitting with people who are hurting? How could you improve? Number three, who is someone who has sat with you in your pain? And number four, who has helped shape your view of God?